Now, the last point this gentleman who you sent me the article mentioned was the anti-Semitism.
Yes.
We've had this conversation before. What happens when you've got a multicultural society and things start going wrong? People start turning on each other. You start wanting to belong to a group that will protect you. And the oldest group to blame for everything are the Jews. So always Jews behind world conspiracies, behind the... I had some guy tweet me the other day, and he basically said the First World War and Second World War started by Jews. So this is a long... I was like, I don't know where you get that from.
Hitler being one of the most notorious Jews.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you talking about? But when we're going through, we're going into... We're not in the middle of bad times yet. We're on the first step of bad times that are coming. You know, this is the first step. We're already turning on each other. As a country, we've already become anti-immigration for good reasons.
Yeah.
Because resources are tight. Nobody cared. Most people didn't care 20, 30 years ago, but we care now because resources are tight. Within the communities we have now in the UK, some now are going back to the old stereotype of it's the Jews. Hence why they're looking at the Free Palestine marches. All the anti-Semitism's coming to the fore. There'll be people on the right now who will also jump on board now, not just the far left. People on the right will be going, yeah, I never really did like those Jews. I get my mouth shut for 30 years, but I always thought it was the Jews, and now other people are saying it's the Jews. And that's why that's coming to the fore now, the anti-Semitism. And
But just on that, I mean, this is, I think this is very strange because the actual number of Jews in this country is tiny. I mean, I don't think it's not even 1% of the population, I don't think.
I think it's like 200,000.
Yes, it is tiny, which is probably 0.5%, I think, is 300,000. So it's a tiny proportion. So why did they... I mean, obviously there's a thing going on in Israel and Palestine, but why does such tiny population in this country, which is insignificant, generate such vitriol? Whereas if we look at the Muslim population now in this country, it's now, again, you may know the percentages.
About 4 million.
Yeah, 4 million. There's a very much larger Muslim community.
Yeah.
So why is all and I'm not saying, by the way, the vitriol should be based on how many people there are. There's a far more visible Muslim population in this country than there is. I would say the Muslim population now is far more visible, certainly in Manchester, than the black population. And certainly more visible than the Jewish population. So why is the vitriol directed into this tiny, tiny group of people who are actually, in terms of protest demonstrations, visibility, interrupting British cultural life, are actually non-existent in that, are they? You hardly see them at all. So why again has it focused on such a tiny group of people? I don't know if you've got the answer to this, by the way.
Your question answers itself, and I'll explain why. If you wanted to persecute a group of people in Manchester, would you pick on the Moss Side Boxing Club, or would you pick on the hardly attended Bridge Club?
Yes.
Who would you pick on?
Yes, the hardly attended Bridge Club.
Exactly. So because the Jewish population in this country is 0.5%, and they don't have a history of violence or demonstrating or terrorism, then they're quite open to being used an easy target and a safe target.
Yeah.
You would have to be extremely brave in this country to attack Muslims in this country, because there will be a backlash.
Yes.
Somebody will put a jihad on your ass.
Yes.
And you may get your head chopped off. So
effectively it's cowardice then.
Bullies always pick on the weak people.
Yeah.
They never pick on the strong people because you might get a good hiding.
Yeah.
So when you are part of a community and you're feeling things aren't going well and you need a scapegoat, well, the Jews are a very nice scapegoat and have been used as scapegoat throughout European history. The Russians did it, the communists did it.
Yeah. It goes back 2,000 years, doesn't it? It goes back over 2,000 years.
Yeah, to the expulsion of the Jews from Israel, not Israel at that time, Judea.
Judea was, Kingdom of Judea it was, and I mean, that's a very interesting point, that it's cowardice, because people can be brave or pretend to be brave and strong when they know there's no threat. And just something relating to it, and I don't want to make this entire mayoral talk about the Jews, but there was also an article last week by Simon Evans, who's, I think you know Simon Evans, he's a comedian, he presents on GB News.
I think I know him. I've not met him. I think
he's a comedian. He kind of squints when he talks, and I think I went to a comedy relief show in London, and Bobby Dabro was hosting, and Simon Evans was on. Simon Evans is also on GB News. He's a comedian who somehow hasn't been cancelled despite having, you know, very clear views about a lot of the issues, the anti-woke issues we've talked about, basically. So he wrote an article in Spiked, which I quite like Spiked, actually. And there was a comedy show, I don't know if you heard about this, Northern Irish comedian called Paul Curry, who I've never heard of before. And as part of this show, at the end of the show, he brought out two flags, a Ukrainian flag and a Palestinian flag, started waving them around, and then asked the audience to stand up and give a standing ovation. Whether it was mock or I don't know what it was, but it was pandering to a particular type of theology or method, you know, thought process with woke people. Anyway, so some guys didn't stand up, and this guy Paul Curry sort of said, "Why are you not standing up?" And the chap said, "Well, we were enjoying the show until he got the flags out and demanding people stand up." And so Paul Curry said, "Well, why are you not standing up?" And the guy said, "Oh, well, we're Israelis." These two Jewish guys. We're Israelis. At which point, this comedian Paul Curry became enraged, started swearing at them, told them to get the fuck out. Pardon my French, gentle listener. But what really kind of chilled me was the rest of the audience started chanting, "Get out." And they hounded these guys out of the comedy club, screaming at them, "Get the fuck out of here," blah, blah, blah. Now, I can't believe we're seeing that happen in this country in this day and age. I found that quite shocking. Did you not think that was something extra? I think that's quite extraordinary.
See, this is where it gets complicated. Because were they hounded out because they were Israelis or because they were Jews?
I don't know.
25% of Israelis, of Arabs, are Muslims.
Yes, correct.
So just because you say you're Israeli doesn't mean you're a Jew. It was only a year or two ago we did the same things to Russian people in this country.
Yeah.
We banned people from tennis matches because they were Russian. Nothing to do with Putin, but they were. So we've already opened that Pandora's box where our country now looks at people as good or bad. What side are you on? Oh, you're Russian, you're a bad person, even though you've got nothing to do with the Russian government, you're a bad person. Oh, you're an Israeli, you're a bad person. So this has all got mixed up now. So it's hard to, sometimes, I mean, there's lots of anti-Semitism involved in this. I'm not saying from one moment there's no anti-Semitism. There's loads of it. But it's hard to point sometimes where it's anti-Semitism or where it's purely anti-Israeli.
No, but for me, the thing, though, Nick, on this is, whether it's anti-Semitism or anti-Israeli, for me, the idea of a crowd screaming at two individuals who haven't done anything wrong, screaming at them, "Get out of here." I think that might be your phone, not mine. I'll switch them. Apologies, listeners. The idea of a crowd, a large crowd of people, whether it's a comedy club or not, it doesn't matter, screaming at two individuals to get out and hounding them out of the building is quite terrifying. Yeah. That's something that I thought we had moved beyond as a society. Because it's not like they were brandishing weapons or... They were innocent people standing there, not causing any problems at all. And they were hounded out with, swearing and pretend. And they said, the guys afterwards, we were scared for our safety. To me, that's something that, is not something that should happen in a society.
It's not British behaviour.
Yeah.
It's not English behaviour.
Yeah.
They were Israelis, therefore they're guests in this country. And we used to treat guests a lot better than we do now.
Yeah.
We didn't treat Germans like that during the Second World War who were in this country. We didn't treat them like that. But this is because we've got identity politics, and we've now got to a stage in this country of identity politics where even the government are looking for good guys and bad guys. And would this have happened 3 years ago, before the Ukraine war? I don't know.
Really?
I think the way we treated Russians has opened this box, so now we can treat anyone like this who we perceive to be on the wrong side.
So identity politics creates mob behaviour, mob rule, basically.
It simplifies complicated issues, so therefore Israelis now are bad. So it doesn't matter you're a tourist here, it doesn't matter you're in my club, it doesn't matter you've paid for a ticket to watch me perform. You're a bad guy. You're the baddies.
Yeah.
And what do we do with baddies? We scream at them, we shout at them. You're lucky we didn't beat you up.
Yeah.
And the Northern Ireland comedian, I don't know with the man, but there's a good chance he's probably Catholic, because the Republicans in Northern Ireland were funded by the Palestinians in the Middle East, their terrorist campaign, and they perceive other people as freedom fighters. So they perceive Hamas as freedom fighters, just like we were freedom fighters. Yeah. What none of them realise is they're all terrorists.
Yeah.
So that comedian feeds into that, depending on his background as well.
And I've experienced this. I don't mean I've experienced personally being handed out of a comedy show, but last year I think it was, I went. There's a singer called Richard Hawley who's kind of, I'm not really a fan of his, but my wife's a fan of his, and he's a middle class, acceptable, he's not even a rapper. He's just, he plays kind of country songs almost, but very popular amongst kind of sort of elderly, middle-aged people. Yeah. So we went to this event, I think it was in Sheffield, which is where he's from. He used to be part of a bigger group, I think. And we went into the venue, and the first thing that irritated me was we had to stand up. And I was like, where's the chairs? Because I want to sit down. At my age, I'm not going to stand up. And then we had to wait for an hour for him to come out. He was late for it, which was really even more irritating. And then he came on, and we were surrounded by these middle-aged kind of rockers, and he played his various songs, but then he played one particular song that was quite sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, but quite volatile, quite a high rock guitar. High tempo. And at the end he said, I was standing there with my wife, and at the end he said, yeah, when I play that song, I imagine smashing a Tory's face in. And the crowd kind of went, hey! And I said to Anna, we're going. Because I said, that is just, to me, totally unacceptable.
Political violence.
Yeah, political violence. It's totally unacceptable. He's got to, he's a musician. That's all he is a musician. He plays something like, and there's something that's really quite violent and aggressive to a crowd of people to incite them to think in the same way. I said to Anna, we're going now. And I was a bit nervous because it was clear everybody else was clapping, and it was clear that we weren't going to tolerate that. And that seems to be becoming a normal behaviour for that violence. Things like the to me, what is missing is decorum, and the British stiff upper lip and all those things that we treasured decades ago. So that seems to have disappeared.
Well, he's missing one of the things he says he probably wants, which is inclusion.
Yes.
How can you have a society where you don't include those people with different beliefs or different opinions to yours? So we're very inclusive here. Apart from you, get out.
Yeah.
That's not inclusion.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. And I think that's something I'm going to start saying to people when they make that, so are you an inclusive person? Are you an inclusive party? Well, why would you have those views about conservatives or whatever it might be? And it's not that I'm a conservative. I think I've said to you before, I think both Tories and Labour need to be out there. But I don't like the idea of one group, whether it's Tories.
Yes, because next day, it's the Jews.
Yes.
The next day, it's the blacks.
Yes.
The next day, it's the gays.
Yes.
He's just picked on the Tories because that's how he feels like today. But another band or someone else will want to pick a different group.
Yeah.
And there's certain groups in our society that it's okay to criticise and to call for their assault and death. So we've got white men, we've got straight men, we've got Jews. The reason why Jews are in there, one of the reasons is because they're perceived as white. No, most Jews aren't white. Most Jews look like an Arab because they're from the same bloody place. Some Jews are black because they come from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
So but some Jews are white.
Yeah.
But because they're perceived as that, you can have a go at that. Tories, you can call for genocide of Tories. But and that's the same thing with the Russians, once you get into a habit of picking people out that you can abuse and you can insult and you can bar from places, well, the next week somebody will want to do another group for that, and eventually you'll be in one of those groups yourself. So the left always eats itself. Eventually some of these people calling for this will be in one of those groups that gets persecuted.
And in fact, that's what I should have said. I should have said, where does this stop, Richard? You know, where does this stop? It's Tories today, what is it tomorrow? You know, and you made a great point. How are these people inclusive? Because they've made their mind up that this group is not going to be included, but it's purely based on their belief and what they think is, as you say, right, isn't it?
If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.